Welcome to Season 2 of Ventures and Visionaries, Episode 15, The Behavior Behind the Leader. The podcast is about vision, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We discuss the lessons and challenges we continue to face so we can uncover opportunities today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Morty Hackle. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Corina Taban, leadership strategist, researcher, and keynote speaker. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Morty. I'm happy to be with you today. How are you?
I'm super excited. Firstly, I'm great. Thank you for asking. I'm really excited that you're here, and most notably because you have a wall of books behind you. And I would love for you to share with the listeners some of your favorite books.
You're making me choose between my babies. Is that
I would never do that. Just highlight maybe one or two that you've been reading recently. How about that?
Well, let me tell you one of my favorite books is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Oh, Half of a Yellow Sun by her is also very good. And I'm reading Dream Count, which is her latest book, which is not as good as the other two that I just mentioned, but it's still up there. I also I think the translation in English is The House of Spirits by
Okay.
Isabel Allende. Right now I'm reading a book called Bullshit Jobs.
I love that. That'll lead us straight into the other conversation.
Exactly.
So long as we don't talk about bullshit leadership, it'll all be good.
Oh man, I hope we don't.
Right.
I'm basing all my work on the fact that leadership should not be bullshit or should stop being bullshit.
I love that. I love that because maybe before we get into the actual leadership, maybe tell us a little bit about how you got to where we are today. A little bit about your background and why is leadership become something that you've decided to research and talk about. And
Okay, so I spent most of my career in technology, where I used to be a negotiator and I used to lead strategic partnerships for Microsoft and afterwards, most recently, for Meta. So I'm fascinated by people. I've always been. That's why I've also enjoyed the job of a negotiation and of strategic partnerships a lot. Um, while I was still at Meta, because I'm not anymore, while I was still at Meta, I went back to school and started researching organizational behavior, behavioral science, also because I am fascinated by people, like really. But the leadership part specifically, that's because, well, I think about why people do the things they do, what motivates them, how society should be, how the workplace should be. I think about these things a lot. So I have a vision of my own of what things should look like. Well, one in society, but I think it's easier to tackle it but through the workplace first. But I
yeah,
have this vision of what the workplace should be and could be, and I'm trying to spread the word around it. I think the easiest way to get to a point where we have sustainable, non toxic workplaces is by developing leaders. So that's why I think a lot about leadership and I talk a lot about it.
you also did quite a fair amount of research on the subject, I think.
Yeah, my research is on the psychological contract, meaning the employee-employer relationship. So it looks at how employees feel fulfilled, how they look for reciprocity in their exchange with the organization and in their employment relationship. And the fact that employees feel fulfilled, the fact that employees build trust and loyalty towards the company, that often is related to the structures that leaders create.
Karina, you're still finding that people are having that similar. In other words, in the 50s, people talked about loyalty to the corporation. Is that to the company? There was, as you said, some sort of a social contract. Maybe it was unwritten that one would work for a company they would retire from said company, they'd get a gold watch and a pension. That contract, to whatever degree, appears to not be the case anymore. But does the loyalty still exist? Does it maybe change with demographics or geographics? Is it different like that?
I mean, it clearly is different, and the way we work has been disrupted. But when I talk about loyalty, I don't necessarily talk about loyalty as in staying with the company for for your entire life. I think
Right.
about it more in terms of while you are with a company, are you going above and beyond? What are you doing to make the company succeed? Do you trust that company, and do you trust that the company has your best intentions in mind? And are you working for the company with the best intentions?
So it's no longer a time-based contract. It sounds like what you're saying is that the idea would be that I am coming with an open heart and an open mind and truly trying to, you know, feel fortunate that this is the opportunity that I'm at today. And so long as that continues to exist, that could be, 6 months, that could be 7 years. It may not matter.
It may not matter, and again, you can look at this on from different aspects, because in the past you could stay with the company for your entire life, but you didn't necessarily care about the company.
Right.
You just went for the paycheck, and you went to the same company day after day because that's just what people did and how things work. But
Right.
today we have this more transactional psychological contract where we're paid, one, we're given benefits, but there's also a question of what are my opportunities? Am I growing? Am I enjoying the people who I work with? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? So yes, it's no longer a question of time necessarily, but it's a question of, is it a reciprocal exchange? And does this exchange make sense for me? Is the company giving me what I'm expecting, and am I giving it the company sort of fair exchange
In
in
return.
return? Exactly.
Do you see that disproportional giving drives this contract in one direction or another, or really it has to be reciprocal in order for it to function?
Um, so you're hitting the nail on the head, because that's really related to what I'm researching. So um, it is supposed to, when people don't receive reciprocity, it's the case for both parties in any case. When one of the parties perceives that there is no reciprocity, the party will try to establish reciprocity in one way or another. Let me give you an example. If an employee doesn't feel, if an employee feels like they're giving their company much more,
Hmm.
at some point that's going to cause frustration, and the employee is going to try to establish a reciprocity through different behaviors. Okay, and that can be neglecting the work, disengaging from the work, quiet quitting. It could potentially be actual quitting eventually.
Fascinating. It's like it's almost like this passive aggressive, childish like behavior in a way.
Yes, in a way, meaning that in most cases, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will go there, because the employee will try at first. It depends a little bit on the personality as well, but will try at first to reestablish reciprocity through other ways. So that could be discussing the problem and going to their supervisors, or going to whoever could, HR or whoever could solve their problem, and see if their problem is actually being considered, if the company is being responsive, the velocity with which the company responds to the issue, and are they looking to fix it or not. So there are these
Interesting.
different types of establishing reciprocity. It's not necessarily neglect or leaving. That comes when you decide that there is no way to establish reciprocity. Now, what we are seeing is that this might be, well, what I am seeing, because this is my specific research, is that this might be a little different for women, because expectations are different for women. There are a lot of gendered expectations that come from society, which
Sure.
translate into the organization as a sort of reflection of the society that we live in, right?
Okay.
So, for example, women are expected to deliver more organizational citizenship behavior, meaning to help other people with different tasks. They are expected to do more emotional labor, meaning be more collaborative, be try to de-escalate conflict, all these kinds of things. So because expectations are a bit different for women, they might be slower in looking for reciprocity. So sometimes they might deliver more and continue delivering more than they should be, even if the company doesn't deliver the same sort of balanced psychological contract commitment.
So, one of the things I read a long time ago, and I'm saying this as a husband and a father of two daughters who are, one is in the workforce, one is about to be in the workforce. So, this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, not just because, I like to talk about interesting things, but because it literally touches me very deeply. But I read a long time ago that some of the to be sure, this is obviously a way more complicated issue, that the pay gap is partially related because women advocate for themselves less. Is
Um,
that also true in your research, or is that changing? How are we seeing that in the world, and do we need to encourage women to advocate for themselves more if, in fact, that is a true statement?
So women advocate for themselves less because it is risky social behavior for women to advocate for themselves. For example, there was this research, which is not mine, but that came out I think a couple of years ago, that was saying that women actually do try to negotiate and that women do ask for more. Because before we were saying women don't do it. Apparently
Ah,
they do,
interesting.
but they are refused much more than men are. So if
Really?
women, yes, so if women try to negotiate or advocate for others, it's perceived as collaborative behavior, which is socially expected from women. But if they try to do it for themselves, then it's often perceived as too assertive, right? And assertiveness is riskier socially for women because we expect women to be more communal. Like they are nicer, they don't advocate. We expect them not to advocate. We expect them not to be assertive. We expect them not to be dominated.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Let's flip the script a little and just go now to the leadership side of that. So, if I'm the employee and I obviously understand I want to advocate for myself, I want to be socially aware, I want to participate, and I want to give. And let's assume all that stuff is true. And my leader is, how should that leader start thinking about him or herself in terms of both? I think we spoke a little bit about, you know, being more consistent. So maybe you can elaborate on that and just some of the findings that your research had on leadership qualities that help employees find their true potential or find their passion.
So, do you mean what an employee can do to find their true potential, or what a leader can do to encourage employees to find?
Yeah, the latter, the leader. What is the leader's responsibility vis-a-vis him or herself to develop both themselves as well as the people that they're responsible for?
Well, I think first of all is encouraging learning, constant learning in themselves and in others, and supporting it. And constant learning means that you have the right to error, that you have the right to be curious and to go explore, that we give just as much or maybe even more appreciation to the progress, to the efforts, to the risk that was taken, instead of just looking at what the outcomes were. So I think that is part of it. Then as a leader, you need to be very attentive on how you support people in terms of their confidence and competence, meaning that somebody who is very young and just entering the workforce is probably not very confident and is probably not very competent. So they will need a totally different support than somebody who has been in this job for a long time and who has the confidence and who has the competence to actually make their own decisions, go explore different things. So you have to treat these people differently. Some of them just need direction, and you say, okay, this is where we're going, go figure it out. And that's what works. And for others, it will be, okay, let's talk through it. What do you need? How can I help? What do you need to learn? Where are we going? Where can I support you best?
So if I were to paraphrase it, and maybe just to make sure that I understood, you're saying that good leadership is exploration of their own EQ so that they can provide contextual guidance and to anybody they're working with on a situational basis.
Yes, plus the encouragement to employees to explore their own EQ as well.
Oh, wow. So I will say that for the last, I don't know, number of years, I find that trying to find stillness and quiet has been very, very helpful to try and explore internally where I'm coming from and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Some of these mini programs, if you will, have been embedded perhaps since childhood, or if you're spiritual, maybe before. I'm not going there, but just curious, what's your experience on trying to practical guides for somebody who is either becoming a leader or is a leader on how they can raise their own leadership levels?
Well, before we go into that, let me turn the question back to you. You say that you find a lot of answers in stillness and in pausing. What do you do to elevate your leadership through these moments?
So that's a great question. So there's a few different parts. There's the part that's really just for me, and that is trying to find some quiet either early in the morning or before I go to bed, preferably both, maybe in the middle of the day, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes, to just try and get to stop the perpetual song or, dialogue that's going on in there. And the part that admittedly I wish I was better at is being present in the moment and not getting, look, as a leader, you have, I think, my experience in leadership is that I get many different competing priorities being thrown my way. Some I need to execute on, some I need to think about, some I need to provide guidance on, some I need to engage in crisis management, some I need to diffuse a situation where I am actually the one diffusing the bomb, so to speak. And other times it's just telling other people, oh, did you think about this, and providing coaching and being able to make those perpetual switches that may happen within the span of an hour. So you're dealing with, I don't know, 7 or 8 different cognitive models that we just generally switch between, some of us better or worse. I find that when things come at me fast and furious, I generally get rattled. And what I've been working on for the last 2 years, one could say probably not so successfully, is remaining a little bit more grounded. I know everybody uses that word. It's a very fond word in these days, and I don't know what that means energetically, but what I'm trying to do is not let my energy go this way, but rather go that way. And that way I can be more calm. I can think more clearly. I'm not pushing, but I'm rather like just a little bit more open, if you will. And I don't even know how to explain it. It's just a feeling. So that was my my little story there.
Did you have any techniques that you use? You said taking those little pauses, 5, 20 minutes. Do you do anything else?
Yeah, so YouTube is an amazing resource. You can find an enormous amount of meditations, calming videos, insightful things to discuss, to listen to that'll help you understand yourself better. I also find that I also find that and this may be stupid because this is a technique that's been around for thousands of years, but just paying attention to your breathing, paying
Mm.
attention to my breathing. So just using that as an anchor to listen to my body. Do I feel tense? Where do I feel tense? If I feel tense, say in my arm or in my shoulder or in the back of my neck, why am I feeling that? And am I clenching? Why am I clenching? Can I just, I don't know. Again, everyone says it sounds a little trite. Can I just let it go? And then could we be more open about the situation? And again, this is an ongoing journey. This doesn't happen in a minute. It's a lot easier said than done, at least in my experience.
No, it is. It is. I mean, and mine as well. And I think, you keep we keep saying, and it's cheesy, what's important is the journey, not the destination. Imagine if you had it all figured out tomorrow, how bored would you be?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. It would be pretty atrocious.
But you got it right. So breathing is probably the fastest way to calm down. And you have so many resources and you've heard so many people talking about it because it works. It's how you regulate your nervous system, and it's probably the best way to calm down almost instantly. Now,
Yeah.
something else that's really important is sleep. That's pretty much a one-stop shop to improving every area of your life, and emotional regulation is a huge part of that.
So it's which one is which, meaning being emotionally regulated helps sleep, or sleep helps emotional regulation, or it's a perpetual flywheel.
It's a perpetual flywheel, but I would try to work on sleep, and that will help with emotional regulation.
So your advice would be to start with, doing all the good things that let people feel rested, and then they can come to work in a much more positive, neutral state, as opposed to, oh my God, I slept poorly last night. I need 17 cups of coffee, and that creates a whole bunch of other.
Yeah, and I mean we're talking more and more about this now, in the sense that busy has always been a sign of status. If you're busy, you're important, right? If you're always
Yes.
busy. But the thing is, you can be much more productive and do more in little time with little techniques, like if you're well rested. And I mean, try this a little bit. Try to notice what happens to your body after a night of good sleep and after a night of poor sleep, and try to look at your focus and your attention. You'll get so much more done in less time if you've slept well than if you've crammed in 3 more hours of work. So you only got like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, probably poor sleep. You'll see that
Yeah.
in the next day, you'll probably have to make up and work another 20 hours because you're not able to focus
Yeah.
and not able to do work that you could probably do in 5, 6 hours.
Karina, do you find that based on kind of what you're saying right now, that the companies of the future and as well as the employees of the future, the contract will shift more towards outcomes, meaning like almost like it would be a collection of solopreneurs that all work together rather than an employee employer type of relationship.
Mm, I think it might. I mean, I think we're starting to see new types of work emerge, much more solopreneurs, much more entrepreneurs, but I don't think employees will go away. I think you will still have companies that will need people working for them. Now, will they be more outcome oriented? I hope so. I mean, I'm somebody who comes from the technology field, from big tech. And big tech used to do this very, very well, in the sense that in most cases, like you could plan your own agenda. Nobody would care when you get there, when you leave, as long as you deliver on results and the standards were very high. Nobody bugged you. You did what you wanted with your time and you organized it as you wished. I think that's changed a little bit with, well, towards the worse, in my opinion, in the last few years, especially since now policies of return to office are stricter. We know that from research that it doesn't improve, that it's more about control, because it doesn't really improve people's productivity if they're in the office. It only improves productivity maybe for graduates and for people who are really early in their career, because they are close to people who have more experience, so they learn. But generally, it doesn't change outcomes in terms of productivity. A lot of people have been laid off as well, but there isn't less work, and AI is not necessarily reducing work, as we've heard. So people are working much more. So I hope this is where we're going with the future. For the moment, it looks like we're at the sort of crossroads where it used to be the tech used to be the workplace of the future, but it no longer is. Now are certain startups taking their place and leading that workforce revolution that we're all hoping for, or are we returning to more traditional models? I wouldn't know what to tell you. But good thing that people are now, I mean, I think it's a good thing that people are now solopreneurs. A lot of people are now solopreneurs. And I feel like that's a sort of work that that's kind of good for a lot of people, not for everybody. But a lot
No,
of people are actually enjoying it, and they are building new ways to work. And that's cool.
I think it's amazing. It's also going to be very interesting to see, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on big tech and where big tech is taking this, because in many ways, a lot of the underlying and the underpinnings of the abilities to be a solopreneur are because of what big tech has done. You know, whether it is the ability to have communication systems or the ability to use globalization in a very, like I think we're speaking from two different parts of the world. So the ability to have this kind of interactions enables a single person who otherwise would need 7, 8, 10 people, not to mention systems to manage all that, just to be able to conduct the thing that we did in, I don't know, a bunch of clicks and a little bit of coordination.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That's right.
It's
An
scary,
amazing
but
time
it's
to be
exciting.
alive.
Scary,
Right.
exciting, scary, exciting.
I like that. Yeah. It's like the little child's game with the little with the little paper thing.
Um, yes. I mean, I think we're clearly at the point of major disruption in how we work. And it's very clear that now you can be a band of one and do amazing things. And I think there was this. I don't think, do we have the first solopreneur billionaire? I don't think we've reached it yet, but I don't think we're that far, are we? Can you
I don't know.
imagine?
That's a good question. I've never seen that research, so I have to look. That is a great question. I'm going to take that as an action item.
Yeah, so I
That
don't
would be
know.
very cool. Like it's really it will be a company of one.
Yes, so that's one of the trends that was expected, I think, for 2026. I don't think we've hit it, but I think we're on our way to have that. Can you imagine?
No, no,
So these
no.
things are, how do you do it? This cannot compute.
Yeah, this is like one of those moments, you know?
Yeah, so we are in this world of permanent and of major disruption. There is a lot of opportunity. There is a lot of uncertainty as well. Our world uncertainty index has never been so high,
Really
ever. No.
interesting. That's another thing that I didn't know that existed. There's a world certainty index.
Yes.
Maybe for my benefit, and maybe the listeners who don't know about this, maybe you could tell me about that for a minute.
Yeah, so this uncertainty index is, well, it's actually created based on all the countries, but I think it also depends on your GDP, meaning that if you have a country whose economy is blooming, they will count more in the index. So it's a way to it's a snapshot of the world. Is it the
Yeah,
best one? I don't know. But what's interesting is that this index is so high. The where we are right now is so high that it's much beyond COVID. It's
really.
much beyond the 2008 crisis, beyond the European debt crisis in 2012, beyond the dot-com bubble. We've never seen this before because
Interesting.
we don't know what's going to happen. People are afraid that they're going to lose their job. Seeing all this geopolitical tumult. It's a tumultuous situation, let's just say. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen and how it's going to go, but it's also an interesting time for potential reinvention, isn't it? Because that's when growth happens, usually. And
Yeah.
if we don't destroy ourselves, maybe we can get out of this with some positive outcomes.
I think that humanity is, look, so I'm a little bit of an optimist here, with the exception of some truly evil people, which we'll leave out of this mix. I think that humanity, as a general rule, is more interested in building than destroying.
Hmm.
But interestingly enough, it takes a lot less effort. No, it takes a lot less time to destroy than it does to build. So it's interesting to see where this is all going to go. I think you're right. I think there's an enormous amount of opportunity, and framing of the mind is probably going to be key. You know, if you're as a researcher seeing this, I don't know, uncertainty, as you said, what would you say people should do to balance the anxiety on the one hand versus the embracing the fact that there's change is opportunity, and frankly, if everything was all good, everyone would be so bored, like we just said. So
I think we could be a little bit more bored right now. A little bit of boredom would be good. I'm an optimist as well, but I also think that we need to pay attention because potentially this disruption is just like the other major technologies that we've seen where people had the same fears and finally everything turned out well. I do think that we should always keep an eye out on what's happening because this is probably not going to be different, but what if it is? So, it takes a little bit of paying attention, of being involved, of making sure, because as you say, most people they want to preserve and self-preserve. They are not interested in destroying. And the boom of solopreneurs shows that we have more builders than we've probably ever had, right?
yeah,
If you look at it, in the masses, you have the power, but people just need to stick together.
yeah, it's interesting because that goes back to what you said all the way at the beginning. It's all about leadership, and how does leadership emerge? And I always wondered about this socially on a number of levels, right? So you see after the not, I'm sorry, after the financial market explosions, you see the emergence of blockchain and cryptocurrencies as almost a counterculture to centralized government managing money and things like that. And, you know, I wonder to what degree some of the changes that are occurring right now are occurring because people are beginning to truly mistrust the intentions of the people who are leading them. So, if somebody wants to be a genuine leader, like at least we believed we had back in the earlier part of the last century, I really wonder what that winds up looking like, and how do people measure genuineness? How do people measure, like so much of what we hear in this ridiculous news cycle is about spin. Like, how do people measure that, like, you're the real deal? Like, you actually want to be useful and helpful and, balance all the, I'd love to do all these things and the practical side of life. And, not everything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is very difficult to see because you don't have direct interaction, especially when you're thinking about people who are in the public eye, about governments, about leaderships that are beyond the workplace, right? Because in the workplace, even if you have like a few thousands of people, or even, I don't know, 150,000 people, they still have a lot of interaction with the leader through town halls, through policies, through. So it's not, there's less spin, as you say, on what you see, even if the organization is big. But then when you move higher, you always have the spin of the media, of social media, and what's being shown to you defines what you believe, one, and two, you're looking. This is called confirmation bias. So basically, you're looking for people and for information that confirms what you already think instead of what is true. So it becomes much trickier to know who is authentic, what if what they're saying is true. We have too much information. We have this idea that we are not maybe informed enough, but the truth is, there's so much information that it's very difficult to distinguish between what's real, what's not, what's important, what isn't. And you were talking about leaders at the beginning of the century. Okay, question for you. What's your favorite leader from history?
Historical leader.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would think for me it's more contextual, I'm Jewish, I'm Orthodox, so I study a lot in within my own world. So, I would say that somebody like Moses, who, brought the ancient Israelites out of slavery and the idea of tyranny versus freedom, the massive change that the Hebrew Bible brought into the world where property damage could not be a capital crime. I think that idea was absolutely mind blowing, 3,500 years ago. I don't think people understood just how unbelievable of an idea that was. And so that's one kind of leader, if you will, and that's a historical figure, whether it's real or fictional. I have no idea, and I'm not smart enough to know. And then you have other kinds of leaders, like the people who led, World War II response to what otherwise would have been really, really bad outcomes, for my people, for sure. And these are just interesting questions on, like, what does really good leadership look like on the macro level? And I think that if I was truly trying to quantify what that is, I think that if you're able to put your people's interest before your own, then you may have a shot at being a good leader. But without that, I don't think that it ever really happens.
Okay, so let me ask you two different questions. One, do you think if, let's suppose that Moses is a historical figure, okay? Do you think that Moses in today's world, if he were a political figure, you would have the same opinion, or he would be able to lead in the same way in a world of polarized media, of social media, of having to make a lot of sacrifices, political sacrifices, in order to get to a place where you can lead?
So I would, and this may be controversial, I would argue that God himself in the Hebrew Bible made that choice and said that Moses would not lead the Israelites out of the wilderness and bring them to the promised land. Rather, it was going to be someone else because Moses' leadership did not quite work in the next phase. So leadership is also tied to those being led. It's not just, me taking somebody out of vacuum and putting them in a different place. So I think that's a great question.
Yes, you did not help me make the point I was aiming for, but I think you're making a very good other point with.
So why don't you tell me your point and then we'll talk about the other point too. That's very
I'm
funny.
gonna spin this.
Go for it.
You make a very good other point of the people you lead are also important. So, you can maybe have the best possible leader, but in a world today that is so polarized, where we don't talk to each other anymore, where even your opponents, political opponents, make it very difficult for you to potentially lead well.
Yeah.
Can you actually, what does a good leader today look like, and can you actually be a good leader? I've had
Yeah.
this theory about, right, you'll have, let me take the American version. You'll probably have people who will say you'll have Roosevelt or Kennedy, who are these inspiring, very inspiring figures for their time. Would they be as inspiring in today's world? I do not know with all that information, but my theories, and I tend to think not, because, well, one, you have to make a lot of compromises to get where you are, and with all the different medias, with all the different opponents that you have, with all the geopolitical issues, I think it's damn hard today to be a political leader, and I think you have to be a little bit perverse to want to be a political leader today.
I was going to say that. Like, you have to be a little bit crazy to want
Yeah,
to go into politics, right?
yeah.
I think it is such a bad job.
It's the worst job. I don't understand why
It's such a
people
bad job. There's so many good things to be doing. All right.
I mean,
On that positive note,
it's such a bad job that you have to have a hidden agenda to want to do it, right?
yeah, it's interesting. I think that I I don't know. I wonder if like I said before about the cryptocurrency emerging, the lack of trust in government, if you know maybe democracy is ripe for another upgrade, for lack of a better term, like some other way. One of the other guests that was on the podcast, I'll take this from a different direction, was talking about using blockchain to establish social currency, where you can illustrate your value in an immutable way. And then people can truly know, oh, Morty, he's a trustworthy fellow, because you can see literally what I said and what I did, and that's all transparent, as opposed to now you really don't know.
No, but do you know the series Black Mirror?
Yeah.
That is that episode with where they have social currency, remember?
Yeah.
So I think that just gives you a very visual way of thinking about the ways this could go wrong. So
It can
I'm
go
not saying
very
it's a
wrong.
bad idea, but
It
I'm
can go very wrong.
saying
I agree.
it should be that there could be negative externalities. If we do build that, it should be, we should be careful.
Yeah, I suppose I shouldn't be advocating for Black Mirror type of activities in society. It's probably the wrong forum for that. But on that lovely note, Karina, I'd love to thank you for joining me today. This was an absolutely delightful conversation, really, really interesting. Thank you for making me think. I hope the audience has an opportunity to think as well. Share with me two thoughts, if you don't mind. Are there any passion projects you're working on? And if people want to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
Am I working on any passion projects? I'm finalizing my doctoral thesis. Thank
Congratulations.
you. I'm looking to send the final manuscript next week or the one after that.
It's a
I
big deal. Congratulations.
Thank you. I take theater courses, and that's a big passion of mine that I very much enjoy. So that's a little passion project
It's fantastic.
yeah.
And if people would want to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to do?
I am very active on LinkedIn. I've just started being a bit more active on Instagram, so I always appreciate the love there as well. And my email is hello@corinataban.com.
Amazing. Corina, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Morty. It was a pleasure being here with you today.
Absolutely. I'd like to also thank our sponsor, KJ Technology, and remind anybody who's listening, if you or somebody you know would be a great guest, please email info@venturesandvisionaries.com. And thank you again to KJ Technology for sponsoring this episode and this season. KJ Technology sits at the intersection of business and technology. They help leadership teams align business goals with technology initiatives so the plans, the people, and the tech teams are all pulling in the same direction. Their experts provide oversight and design proactive processes and solutions to solve real-world business challenges. For a complimentary consultation, please email info@kgtechnology.com, visit their website, or call 646-556-6500. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.